Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I'm so happy to have you here today. I hope you're all doing great and feeling excited because today we're diving into something truly important: how to speak English fluently and confidently, and improve your English listening and speaking skills. It's no secret that many people can understand English quite well, whether it's reading or listening, but when it comes to speaking, they often freeze up. Maybe you've been there yourself, understanding everything that's said, but when it's your turn to speak, you feel unsure or nervous. The truth is, speaking English, like any skill, takes practice, patience, and a lot of self-confidence. But don't worry. Everyone goes through this phase, and it's completely normal. Speaking English isn't just about knowing vocabulary or grammar. It's about being able to communicate clearly, express your thoughts, and engage in conversations comfortably. Throughout this session, I'll share helpful tips, personal stories, and practical advice to help you overcome any fears or hesitations you may have about speaking English. You'll learn how to practice speaking with confidence, expand your vocabulary, and get more comfortable using English in everyday situations. Let's kick things off and explore how you can take small steps every day to improve your speaking skills. Are you ready? Let's get started. Part 2. Story 1. James. Let me tell you the story of my friend James. James moved to a new country where English was the primary language. Before moving, he knew some English from school, but like many people, he was afraid of speaking it. He could understand what people were saying, but when it came time to speak, he would freeze up and feel nervous. When James first arrived, he spent a lot of time listening to people speak in English. Whether it was at the grocery store, at work, or even just walking down the street, he noticed how confident people were when they spoke. But despite understanding everything perfectly, James would often stay quiet. He felt that his accent wasn't good enough, and he was afraid of making mistakes. Every time he tried to speak, he felt embarrassed, as if people would judge him for not being fluent. One day, after months of feeling uncomfortable, James decided that he needed to do something about it. He couldn't continue being afraid of speaking. He realized that if he wanted to improve his English, he would have to practice regularly and in real situations. The first thing James did was start talking to himself in the mirror. It might sound a little strange, but this simple step made a big difference. James would stand in front of the mirror each morning and say things like, "Hello, my name is James," or, "Today, I am going to the store." These were simple sentences, but they helped him get used to hearing his own voice speaking English. The more he practiced, the less nervous he felt about his own accent or pronunciation. Slowly, he began to feel more comfortable using English, even if he made mistakes. But James didn't stop there. He knew that practicing alone wasn't enough. He needed to expose himself to the language in different ways, so he began watching English movies and TV shows. This helped him hear the natural flow of conversations, the tone people used, and the way they expressed themselves in different situations. James would listen carefully, paying attention to the phrases and words that stood out to him. He would then repeat them, trying to copy the way the actors spoke. At first, this felt awkward too. James had trouble repeating the lines exactly as they were said, especially with different accents or unfamiliar expressions. But over time, he got better. He noticed that he started to use these phrases in his own conversations. He didn't have to think too much about it. They just came naturally. Watching English movies and TV shows also helped him understand the cultural context behind certain phrases, which made his speaking sound more natural. Still, even with all this practice, James didn't feel ready to speak in real conversations. He felt like he needed more support, so he joined an English conversation club. This was a group of people who met once a week to practice speaking English together. At first, James was very shy. He didn't want to make mistakes in front of others, and he worried that people would laugh at him. But what he quickly realized was that everyone in the group was there for the same reason: to practice and improve. No one was perfect, and everyone understood how he felt. They made him feel welcome and encouraged him to participate, no matter how many mistakes he made. It was in the conversation club that James made the most progress. Every week, he practiced speaking English with people from different backgrounds and levels of proficiency. The more he spoke, the more confident he became. His fellow club members were supportive, and they helped him with difficult words or phrases. No one laughed at his mistakes. Instead, they corrected him kindly and gave him tips to improve. James also made friends with some of his English-speaking neighbors. He felt comfortable enough to tell them about his struggles with speaking English. They were understanding and offered to help him practice. They invited him over for tea, and during their casual chats, James practiced his English. The conversations were informal and fun, and over time, James became more comfortable with real-life English. One of the best things that happened during these conversations was that James stopped being afraid of making mistakes. He realized that everyone, even native speakers, made mistakes. He learned to laugh at his own mistakes and see them as opportunities to grow. This shift in mindset was key to his improvement. James's confidence grew with every conversation. As he continued practicing, he started speaking more fluently. He could express his ideas without hesitating, and people began to notice. They complimented him on his progress, and that motivated him even more. James felt proud of himself because he had worked hard and it had paid off. Through all of this, James learned an important lesson. Speaking a language isn't about being perfect. It's about making the effort and using the language as much as possible. The more you practice, the more comfortable you get. And the key is to keep pushing yourself, even when you make mistakes. Mistakes are not a sign of failure. They are a sign of progress. James's story shows us how important it is to practice speaking regularly, even if it feels awkward at first. It also reminds us that we need to be patient with ourselves and not be afraid to make mistakes. The more you practice speaking, the easier it gets, and before you know it, you'll be speaking English with the same confidence as a native speaker. Part 3. Story 2. Lily. Let me share with you the story of my friend, Lily. Lily moved to an English-speaking country for her job. She had always been good at reading and writing in English. She could read articles, understand books, and write emails with ease. But when it came to speaking, she found herself struggling. Like many others, she understood English perfectly but couldn't speak it fluently. At work, Lily was constantly surrounded by native English speakers. Her colleagues would speak quickly in meetings, and while she could follow along when it was her turn to speak, she would freeze. She felt nervous and her words would get stuck. Often she would stutter or hesitate, unsure of what to say or how to phrase her thoughts. It made her feel frustrated because she knew she could understand everything, but her fear of making mistakes prevented her from speaking confidently. Lily realized that if she wanted to be successful in her job and feel more comfortable in her day-to-day life, she had to improve her speaking skills. She decided to take action, but she knew it wouldn't be easy. The first thing she did was to find a language partner. She knew that practicing with someone who was a native speaker would help her improve faster. So she reached out to a colleague who was willing to help. This colleague wanted to learn Lily's native language, and so they agreed to meet twice a week for a language exchange. At first, Lily felt a little nervous about meeting her language partner. What if she made mistakes? What if she couldn't find the right words? But to her surprise, her language partner was very understanding. They both made mistakes and laughed about it. This relaxed environment made Lily feel more comfortable. They would practice speaking about different topics, such as work, hobbies, and daily life. Her language partner would correct her pronunciation and suggest better ways to phrase certain sentences. This exchange helped Lily expand her vocabulary and feel more confident using English in real conversations. But Lily didn't stop there. She knew that regular practice was key, so she also decided to take an online speaking course. The course provided a variety of speaking exercises and activities that were designed to improve fluency. These activities covered a range of topics, from casual conversations to more professional discussions. One of the best parts of the course was the feedback from the teachers. They would listen to Lily's recordings, point out areas where she needed improvement, and give her specific tips on how to speak more naturally. Lily found this feedback extremely valuable. It allowed her to see where she was going wrong and gave her a clear plan on how to improve. For example, she learned that she tended to rush her speech when she was nervous. She would speak too quickly, which made it harder for others to understand her. The teachers advised her to slow down and focus on speaking clearly. This advice was a game changer. As soon as Lily started focusing on speaking more slowly and clearly, she noticed a big improvement. Not only did people understand her better, but she also felt more in control of her speech. One of the biggest changes Lily made was in her attitude toward mistakes. At first, she was terrified of making errors in front of others. She thought people would judge her if she mispronounced a word or used the wrong grammar. But through her language exchange and the feedback from her course, Lily started to realize that mistakes were a natural part of the learning process. Instead of being embarrassed by her mistakes, she began to see them as opportunities to improve. If she made a mistake, she would simply correct it and move on. This shift in mindset gave her a huge boost in confidence. As Lily continued practicing, she also made an effort to use English in her daily life. She started recording herself speaking about different topics. She would listen to the recordings, identify areas where she could improve, and try again. This helped her improve her pronunciation and fluency. Lily also began speaking to her colleagues more during lunch breaks. At first, she would only say a few words here and there, but over time she began to participate more in conversations. Her colleagues were supportive, and they appreciated her efforts to speak English. They would help her with difficult words and offer advice on how to express herself better. Slowly but surely, Lily's speaking skills began to improve. She became more confident in meetings and started contributing more to discussions. Her colleagues noticed the change and praised her for her progress. They could see that she had put in the effort and was getting better every day. This positive reinforcement motivated Lily to keep going. The more she practiced, the more fluent she became. Lily also found that joining social activities outside of work helped her practice speaking. She joined a book club and a local cooking class where English was the primary language. These activities gave her the opportunity to speak with people from different backgrounds, and it helped her learn new words and expressions. She found that speaking in these informal settings was much easier and less intimidating than in work-related situations. These casual conversations helped her build the confidence she needed to speak in more formal settings as well. Over time, Lily's fear of speaking in English gradually faded away. She no longer felt nervous when it was her turn to speak in meetings. She could express her ideas clearly and confidently. Her ability to communicate in English improved so much that she was even able to give a presentation at work. It was a huge milestone for her, and she felt extremely proud of how far she had come. Lily's story teaches us several important lessons. First, it shows that even if you are good at reading and writing, speaking can still be a challenge. The key to improving your speaking skills is consistent practice and exposure to the language. Second, it's important to change the way you view mistakes. Mistakes are not something to be afraid of. They are an essential part of the learning process. Third, feedback and support from others can make a big difference. Having a language partner or a teacher who provides constructive feedback can help you progress faster. Finally, don't be afraid to use English in your daily life. The more you speak, the more comfortable and confident you will become. Lily's journey is a perfect example of how hard work, patience, and a positive mindset can lead to success. If you follow her example, practice consistently, and stay motivated, you too can improve your speaking skills and communicate confidently in English. Part 4. Key lessons from the stories. From the stories of James and Lily, we can draw several important lessons that will help anyone looking to improve their English speaking skills. These lessons aren't just about speaking the language. They're about changing our mindset, staying motivated, and using effective strategies to practice regularly. Let's take a closer look at some of the key lessons we can learn from their journeys. Regular practice is key. One of the most important lessons from both James and Lily's stories is the power of regular practice. As we saw with James, he didn't improve his speaking skills overnight. He started small, talking to himself in the mirror and repeating simple phrases. But the key point here is that he did it every day. Consistent practice, no matter how simple or basic, is what helped him gain confidence over time. Lily's journey also shows the value of regular practice. She didn't wait for the perfect moment to start speaking. Instead, she took every opportunity to practice. whether it was in casual conversations with her colleagues or through her language exchange sessions. The more she spoke, the easier it became. It's important to remember that speaking a new language is like building a muscle. If you don't use it regularly, you won't see progress. Tip: set aside time every day to practice speaking English. Even if it's just for 10-15 minutes, speaking regularly will make a huge difference in your confidence and fluency. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Another powerful lesson from these stories is the importance of embracing mistakes. Both James and Lily were afraid of making mistakes when they started speaking English. James felt embarrassed by his accent, and Lily was worried people would judge her for her errors. But as they practiced more and received encouragement from others, they both realized that mistakes are a natural part of learning. Mistakes are not something to be ashamed of. They are opportunities for growth. Every time you make a mistake, you learn something new. Whether it's a wrong pronunciation, a grammatical error, or using the wrong word, it's a chance to improve. The key is to not let those mistakes stop you from speaking. If anything, embrace them as stepping stones to becoming a better speaker. Tip: don't let the fear of making mistakes hold you back from speaking. See every mistake as an opportunity to improve, and don't be afraid to laugh at them and keep going. The power of feedback and support. James and Lily both found that having feedback and support from others was incredibly valuable in their learning journeys. James joined a conversation club where he received encouragement and constructive feedback from other members. Lily, on the other hand, practiced with a language partner and took an online course, both of which offered valuable feedback from teachers and peers. Getting feedback is essential for improvement. It helps you see where you're going wrong and gives you the tools to make adjustments. The feedback doesn't have to be harsh or critical. Just a small correction here and there can make a huge difference. Additionally, having a support system, whether it's a teacher, a language partner, or friends, keeps you motivated and reminds you that you're not alone in the learning process. Tip: surround yourself with people who are supportive and willing to help. Seek out a language partner, join a conversation group, or take courses where you can receive feedback on your speaking skills. Having someone to guide you makes the learning process easier and more enjoyable. Focus on fluency, not perfection. 1. Mistake many learners make is focusing too much on being perfect. They think that they need to speak without any errors or hesitation, but the truth is, fluency is more important than perfection. If you focus on speaking perfectly, you might, end up getting stuck in your head and feeling nervous every time you speak. James and Lily both understood this important lesson. James didn't worry about making his sentences perfect. Instead, he focused on just speaking. He didn't care if he made mistakes as long as he was trying. Lily, too, shifted her mindset from being afraid of mistakes to focusing on fluency. She practiced speaking slowly and clearly, and gradually, her sentences became more natural. Fluency comes with time and consistent practice. The goal isn't to speak perfectly, but to speak confidently and clearly, even if you make occasional mistakes. The more you practice, the smoother and more natural your speech will become. Tip: don't aim for perfection. Focus on speaking naturally and clearly. The more you speak, the more fluent you'll become, and the fewer mistakes you'll make over time. Use real-life opportunities to practice. Both James and Lily learned that the best way to improve speaking skills is by using English in real-life situations. James practiced by talking to himself in front of the mirror, but he also took every opportunity to speak with others. He joined a conversation club and had informal chats with his neighbors. These real-world conversations allowed him to apply what he had learned in a practical way. Lily also made sure to use English in her daily life. She recorded herself speaking, participated in lunch conversations with colleagues, and practiced with her language partner. She didn't wait for a special time to practice. She used every situation as an opportunity to speak. This is a powerful strategy because it helps you learn how to use English in the context of real conversations, rather than just memorizing. Vocabulary or grammar rules. Tip: look for opportunities to speak English every day. Whether it's ordering food at a restaurant, talking to a colleague, or having a conversation with a friend, practicing in real situations will help you improve faster and gain more confidence. Patience and consistency are crucial. James and Lily's stories also highlight the importance of patience and consistency. Learning to speak English doesn't happen overnight, and it requires time and consistent effort. Both James and Lily worked hard over time to improve, but they didn't expect instant results. They understood that it's a gradual process, and that's okay. In James's case, he wasn't fluent after just a few weeks. He kept practicing even when it felt uncomfortable. Lily also took small steps, gradually gaining more confidence with each conversation. Over time, they both saw significant improvements. Tip: be patient with yourself and understand that language learning takes time. Stay consistent with your practice, and over time, you'll see great progress. Enjoy the learning process. Finally, both James and Lily discovered that learning English can and should be fun. They didn't just focus on the hard work of learning a language, they found ways to enjoy it. James watched movies and TV shows in English, which helped him learn new phrases and expressions while having fun. Lily joined social activities like a book club and cooking class, where she practiced speaking English in a relaxed and enjoyable environment. The more you enjoy the process, the more likely you are to stick with it. Language learning doesn't have to be a chore. It can be an exciting and enjoyable experience if you approach it with a positive attitude. Tip: find ways to make learning fun. Watch movies, listen to music, join clubs, or engage in activities you enjoy that will allow you to practice English in a fun and low-pressure environment. Conclusion: the stories of James and Lily offer valuable lessons that can help anyone looking to improve their English speaking skills. Regular practice, embracing mistakes, seeking feedback, focusing on fluency, using real-life situations, being patient, and enjoying the learning process. These are all crucial components of becoming a confident English speaker. So, take these lessons to heart, and remember that learning a language is a journey. It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress, staying consistent, and enjoying the experience along the way. Part 5. Practical Tips for Improving Speaking. Now that we've gone through the stories and lessons learned from James and Lily, let's move on to some practical tips that you can apply right away to improve your English speaking skills. These tips will help you practice effectively, build your confidence, and make learning English an enjoyable and successful experience. Practice speaking every day. One of the most important tips for improving your speaking skills is to make speaking a daily habit. Just like any other skill, speaking requires consistent practice. If you only practice once in a while, your progress will be slow. But if you make it a part of your daily routine, you will see improvement much faster. You don't need to have a conversation partner every day, and you don't need to spend hours on end practicing. Even just 10 to 15 minutes a day can make a huge difference. Start by talking to yourself. Say a few sentences about your day, your plans, or your thoughts. You could also practice by reading aloud from a book or repeating sentences you hear in movies or TV shows. The key is consistency. Even if you only have a short time, it's better to practice daily than to have a long session once in a while. The more you speak, the more comfortable and confident you will become. Tip: set aside a specific time every day to speak English. whether it's in the morning while getting ready or during your lunch break. Make it a non-negotiable part of your routine. 2. Speak slowly and clearly. When you're nervous or anxious about speaking, it's easy to start talking too fast. But speaking quickly can make it harder for others to understand you, and it can also make you feel more stressed. Instead, focus on speaking slowly and clearly. This gives you more time to think about what you want to say, and it ensures that your words are understood by others. Speaking slowly doesn't mean you have to speak in a monotonous or unnatural way. It just means that you should focus on pronouncing each word clearly and taking your time to express your ideas. It also helps you to avoid skipping over words or rushing through sentences, which can lead to mistakes. When you focus on speaking slowly, you'll feel less rushed, and your mind won't be as overwhelmed. Plus, it will make your English sound more confident and clear. Tip: practice speaking slowly by reading aloud and paying attention to how clearly you pronounce each word. Try to articulate your sentences fully without rushing. Expand your vocabulary. Having a strong vocabulary is key to speaking confidently and effectively. The more words you know, the easier it will be to express yourself in different situations. One of the best ways to expand your vocabulary is by reading books, watching movies, and listening to music in English. These activities expose you to new words, phrases, and expressions that you can use in your own conversations. However, learning new vocabulary isn't just about memorizing words. It's about learning how to use them in context. Whenever you come across a new word, try to understand its meaning and how it's used in a sentence. You can then practice using it in your own sentences. Don't forget to keep a vocabulary notebook where you write down new words and phrases. Review them regularly and make a habit of using them in your conversations. The more you use new words, the easier it will be to remember them. Tip: make it a habit to learn 3 to 5 new words every day and practice using them in sentences. This will gradually expand your vocabulary and help you feel more comfortable in conversations. Listen to native speakers. Listening to native speakers is one of the best ways to improve your speaking skills. By listening to how native speakers pronounce words, use intonation, and structure their sentences, you can learn to speak more naturally and fluently. Native speakers also use phrases and expressions that you may not find in textbooks, which can make your English sound more authentic. There are many ways to expose yourself to native English speakers. You can watch English movies, TV shows, or documentaries, or listen to podcasts, audiobooks, and music in English. Pay attention to how the speakers emphasize certain words, their tone of voice, and how they express emotions. This will help you sound more natural when you speak. You can also use language learning apps that provide recordings from native speakers. Try to imitate their pronunciation and sentence structure. This technique, known as shadowing, helps you practice both listening and speaking at the same time. Tip: spend at least 15-20 minutes a day listening to native speakers. Try repeating what they say to practice pronunciation and intonation. 5. Join a conversation group or find a speaking partner. One of the most effective ways to improve your speaking skills is to engage in real conversations with others. Speaking in a real-life situation gives you the opportunity to apply what you've learned, and it helps you feel more confident using English in everyday interactions. Join a conversation group or find a language partner who you can practice with regularly. Many cities have language exchange meetups where learners of different languages come together to practice speaking. If you're not able to attend in-person meetups, there are plenty of online platforms where you can connect with language partners, such as through apps like Tandem or HelloTalk. Having a conversation partner is great because it gives you someone to practice with in a low-pressure setting. Your partner can help correct your mistakes, encourage you, and even give you feedback on how to improve. Plus, practicing with someone else will help you build your confidence. Tip: if you don't have a language partner, try to find a friend, colleague, or even a teacher who is willing to have regular conversations with you in English. Use English in everyday situations. The best way to become more comfortable speaking English is to use it in everyday situations. This could be as simple as ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, or having a casual conversation with a colleague. These real-world situations provide you with the opportunity to practice speaking naturally, and they allow you to test your language skills in practical contexts. When you use English in everyday life, you get used to hearing and speaking the language in a variety of situations. This helps you think on your feet and become more confident in your ability to use English without overthinking it. The more you practice in everyday situations, the more comfortable you'll become with speaking in more formal or professional settings. Tip: look for opportunities to use English every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. Practice ordering food, asking for directions, or talking to a friend in English. Record yourself speaking. Recording yourself speaking can be a powerful tool for improvement. When you listen to the recording, you can hear your pronunciation, tone, and the flow of your sentences. It also helps you identify areas where you may need to improve, such as speaking too quickly or making certain pronunciation errors. Don't worry about sounding perfect. The goal is to track your progress and become aware of the areas you need to work on. You can also compare recordings over time to see how much you've improved. If you don't feel comfortable recording long conversations at first, start with short sentences or read aloud from a book. Over time, you can build up to longer recordings. This will help you become more confident in your speaking ability. Tip: try recording yourself speaking every week. Listen to the recordings and make note of areas where you can improve. Then focus on those areas during your next practice session. Focus on pronunciation and intonation. Correct pronunciation is crucial for clear communication. It doesn't matter how many words you know if others can't understand you because of your pronunciation. Focus on learning the correct pronunciation of words, paying attention to stress and intonation. Intonation refers to the rise and fall of your voice. When you speak, it can change the meaning of a sentence or question. For example, a rising intonation at the end of a sentence often signals a question, while a falling intonation is used in statements. Many learners find pronunciation and intonation challenging, but the good news is that they can be improved with practice. You can practice pronunciation by listening to native speakers and repeating their words or sentences. For intonation, try mimicking how native speakers emphasize certain words or phrases and focus on matching the rhythm of their speech. Tip: work on pronunciation by listening to English content and repeating it. Focus on how native speakers stress certain words and the rise and fall of their voices. Conclusion: by following these practical tips, you'll be on your way to improving your speaking skills and becoming a more confident English speaker. Remember, improvement takes time. But with regular practice and a focus on speaking clearly and naturally, you will see noticeable progress. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and always look for opportunities to practice and expand your vocabulary. The more you speak, the better you'll get. Keep practicing, stay patient, and enjoy the process. Part 6. Story 3. Ethan. Let me share with you the story of my friend Ethan. Ethan had always dreamed of working in an English-speaking country. He had studied English in school, and while he was good at reading and writing, he found speaking to be his biggest challenge. After many years of preparation, Ethan finally got a job offer in the United States. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, but it also meant facing one of his biggest fears: speaking English confidently in a professional setting. When Ethan first arrived in the U.S., He was overwhelmed. Everything was so different from what he was used to. The accent, the slang, the fast pace of conversations. It was all much more difficult than he had imagined. Ethan found himself hesitating during meetings at work, unsure of how to express his ideas clearly. Even though he could understand everything that was being said, speaking up in meetings was a completely different story. In the first few weeks, Ethan stayed quiet in most meetings. He would listen carefully, taking notes and trying to keep up. But when it was his turn to speak, he would freeze. His heart would race, and he would often forget the words he wanted to say. He was afraid of making mistakes or sounding silly, so he would stay silent. This made him feel even more frustrated because he knew he had valuable ideas to share, but he couldn't bring himself to speak up. One day, after a particularly frustrating meeting, Ethan decided he needed to do something about his speaking skills. He knew he couldn't keep avoiding speaking, especially in his job where communication was key. He wanted to contribute, to be heard, and to be confident in his ability to express his ideas in English. The first thing Ethan did was to set small, achievable goals. Instead of thinking about speaking in front of an entire room full of colleagues, he decided to focus on making simple contributions during meetings. He told himself that it was okay if he made mistakes. It was more important to participate and try. This mindset shift was crucial for Ethan. He stopped focusing on perfection and began focusing on progress. Ethan also realized that he needed to get more comfortable with speaking in general. So, he decided to practice speaking every day, even if it was just for a few minutes. He started by speaking to himself. Every morning, before work, Ethan would talk aloud about his plans for the day. He would describe what he was going to do, what meetings he had, and what tasks he needed to accomplish. At first, it felt strange to speak to himself out loud, but over time, he got used to it. This helped him get comfortable with hearing his own voice and allowed him to practice forming sentences without the pressure of a real conversation. But speaking to himself wasn't enough. Ethan knew he needed more practice in real-world situations. So, he began looking for opportunities to speak English outside of work. One thing that helped him was joining a local language exchange group. In these groups, people from different countries come together to practice speaking English, and Ethan thought it would be a great way to meet people and practice in a low-pressure environment. At first, Ethan was nervous about attending the group. He worried about speaking with strangers and making mistakes in front of others. But when he arrived, he found that everyone was there for the same reason: to practice and improve their English. The group was supportive, and Ethan felt more relaxed, knowing that everyone was learning and making mistakes together. He started attending these meetings regularly, and little by little, he became more comfortable speaking with different people. Ethan also started recording himself speaking. He would pick a topic, such as his job, his hobbies, or his weekend plans, and speak about it for a few minutes. He would then listen to the recording and pay attention to things like his pronunciation, speed, and fluency. This was a great way for Ethan to track his progress and identify areas where he could improve. If he noticed that he was speaking too fast, he would slow down the next time. If he realized that he was using the wrong word or phrase, he would make a note to use it correctly in the future. Another strategy Ethan used was watching English language TV shows and movies. This was one of his favorite ways to learn new words and expressions. He loved watching shows in the workplace or business-related series because it exposed him to the kind of language used in professional settings. He would watch with subtitles to understand the context, and then, after the show, he would repeat some of the sentences or phrases he had heard. This helped him get a better understanding of natural speech patterns, as well as tone and pronunciation. Ethan noticed that this not only improved his vocabulary, but also helped him feel more confident using phrases he had heard in real conversations. As time passed, Ethan began to see real improvement. His colleagues at work started noticing that he was speaking up more in meetings. He wasn't perfect, but he was participating, and that made a huge difference. Instead of staying silent, he started contributing his ideas and asking questions. He also stopped worrying about making mistakes. He realized that everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers, and that they didn't define his ability to communicate. The most important thing was to keep trying, keep speaking, and keep improving. Ethan's confidence grew, and with it, his speaking skills. By setting small goals, practicing every day, joining a language exchange group, and using English in real situations, he was able to overcome his fear of speaking and become more comfortable with expressing himself in English. Eventually, Ethan found himself enjoying conversations at work, speaking freely without the constant fear of making mistakes. One of the biggest milestones for Ethan came when he was asked to give a presentation at work. This was a big challenge. For him, as speaking in front of a group of people had always made him nervous. But thanks to all the practice he had been doing, he felt prepared. He spoke clearly and confidently, and at the end of the presentation, his colleagues gave him positive feedback. This moment marked a major turning point for Ethan. It was proof that all his hard work had paid off. From Ethan's story, we learn Several key lessons. First, it's important to set small and achievable goals. Rather than aiming for perfection, focus on making progress. Second, practice every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. Consistency is key to improvement. Third, get comfortable speaking in real-world situations. Whether it's joining a language exchange group or speaking to colleagues, the more you use English in everyday contexts, the more confident you'll become. Fourth, don't be afraid of making mistakes. Mistakes are a natural part of learning, and they are a sign of progress. Finally, take advantage of technology and media. Watch movies, listen to podcasts, and record yourself speaking. These are all great tools to help you improve. Ethan's journey shows us that with determination, consistent practice, and the right mindset, anyone can improve their English speaking skills. It's about taking small steps, building confidence, and staying persistent. Remember, speaking is a skill that gets better the more you use it. So, take a deep breath, start practicing, and keep moving forward, just like Ethan did. Part 7. Story. Emma. Let me tell you the story of my friend Emma. Emma had always been passionate about languages and dreamed of moving to an English-speaking country for her studies. She was a diligent student and excelled at reading, writing, and grammar. However, there was one major hurdle she couldn't seem to overcome: speaking English. Emma knew that speaking was an essential skill for both academic success and social interactions. But despite her best efforts, she felt stuck when it came to verbal communication. After years of studying English in her home country, Emma finally received an opportunity to study abroad in the United Kingdom. She was thrilled about the prospect of immersing herself in an English-speaking environment, but she also felt a sense of anxiety. Would she be able to speak fluently and confidently in class? Would she be able to make friends without feeling embarrassed about her accent and speaking mistakes? These questions ran through her mind every day leading up to her departure. Upon arriving in the UK, Emma quickly realized that the language barrier was much more challenging than she had anticipated. While she was able to understand everything that was being said around her, participating in conversations, especially academic discussions, was another story. At the university, her professors spoke rapidly and used idiomatic expressions, which made it even harder for Emma to keep up. In group seminars, she would listen carefully to her classmates' discussions, but when it was her turn to speak, she felt an overwhelming sense of nervousness. Her thoughts became jumbled, and the words she knew so well in her head suddenly escaped her. In the beginning, Emma tried to push through her fears. She would attend every lecture, take notes, and do all her assignments. But when it came to speaking in front of her peers, she often stayed silent. In group activities, she would nod along, but she avoided participating in the conversation. This silence made Emma feel isolated. She would see other students easily expressing their ideas, and she felt like an outsider, not because she didn't have ideas to share, but because she couldn't find the courage to speak up. One day, after a particularly frustrating group seminar where she had stayed silent once again, Emma decided that things had to change. She knew that she couldn't continue hiding in the background, and she was determined to improve her speaking skills. But where should she start? The idea of speaking up in class seemed daunting, so she decided to break down her goal into smaller, more manageable steps. Emma's first step was to practice speaking outside of class. She began by recording herself speaking about her day. At first, it felt strange to hear her own voice, and she would often stop midway because she didn't like how she sounded. But over time, she became more comfortable with the process. Recording herself helped her become more aware of her pronunciation, the speed at which she spoke, and areas where she was making mistakes. She started recording herself every day, talking about different topics, what she did in class, what she was planning to do that evening, or her thoughts on a book she was reading. Listening to these recordings allowed Emma to pinpoint her weaknesses, like speaking too fast or using filler words like and However, recording herself wasn't enough. Emma realized that she needed to engage in real conversations to gain the confidence she needed. So, she began practicing speaking with her flatmates and classmates. Initially, she was terrified of making mistakes, especially in front of people she didn't know well. But her flatmates were supportive and encouraging. They would speak slowly when they noticed Emma struggling and would gently correct her mistakes without making her feel embarrassed. One of her flatmates even started a language exchange with her, where they would speak in English for half an hour and then switch to Emma's native language for the other half. This helped Emma gain the confidence to speak, knowing that she had a safe space to practice. Emma also found that joining clubs and social groups helped her practice speaking in a more relaxed environment. She joined a book club at the university, which was an excellent way to practice speaking in English while talking about something she loved: literature. During meetings, they would discuss the books they were reading, share opinions, and express their thoughts. Even though she still felt nervous at first, Emma pushed herself to speak during the discussions. The other members of the book club were understanding and patient, and over time, Emma's confidence grew. In addition to these conversational practices, Emma started to pay attention to the way native speakers used language in everyday situations. She would sit in cafes, listen to people talking around her, and observe the rhythms and expressions they used. Sometimes she would mimic the phrases she heard, repeating them out loud until she felt confident saying them. She noticed that in everyday conversations, people didn't always use perfect grammar, and they often used slang or casual phrases. This realization made her feel more at ease, as she realized that native speakers also made mistakes and didn't always follow rigid rules of grammar. Emma also started practicing English with her professors after class. She would approach them with simple questions about the lecture or ask for clarification on certain points. These small conversations were a big step for Emma, as they allowed her to speak in a professional setting without the pressure of a large group. She found that her professors were more than willing to help her and appreciated her effort to communicate in English. These one-on-one interactions were crucial in building her confidence and gave her the opportunity to practice academic English in a less intimidating environment. Slowly, Emma began to notice changes. She started participating more in class discussions and group seminars. Though she still felt nervous at times, she no longer let that stop her from speaking. She learned to focus on expressing her ideas rather than worrying about making mistakes. Her classmates began to appreciate her contributions, and she felt more connected to them. Emma also realized that speaking in English wasn't about being perfect. It was about sharing her thoughts and engaging with others. The more she practiced, the more fluent and comfortable she became. By the end of her first year at university, Emma had made significant progress in her speaking skills. She was able to express herself more clearly in both informal and academic settings. She was no longer afraid of making mistakes and had developed a much more positive attitude toward learning and using English. Emma's breakthrough moment came when she was invited to give a short presentation in class. It was a daunting task, but she felt prepared. She had practiced her speech multiple times, spoken it aloud to her flatmates, and even recorded herself to improve her delivery. When the day of the presentation arrived, Emma stood in front of her class with confidence. She spoke slowly and clearly, and although she made a few mistakes, she didn't let them derail her. By the end of her presentation, she received a round of applause from her classmates, and more importantly, she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Emma's story is a powerful reminder that improving your speaking skills requires patience, practice, and the willingness to step out of your comfort zone. It also teaches us that we don't need to be perfect to communicate effectively. The more we practice, the more confident we become, and eventually, speaking becomes a natural part of our daily lives. Emma's journey shows that if you keep pushing yourself to speak, even in small ways, you'll eventually break through the barriers that hold you back. Part 8. Story 5. Daniel. Let me tell you the story of my friend, Daniel. Daniel's story is a little different from the others, but it still holds important lessons about learning to speak English with confidence. Daniel had always been a confident and outgoing person, but there was one area where he really struggled: speaking English. Daniel had learned English throughout school, and he had always done well in his grammar tests and written assignments. He had the knowledge, but when it came to speaking, he just couldn't bring himself to do it. Every time he had to speak English, whether it was at work, during a presentation, or just in casual conversations, he would freeze up. He felt anxious, and his mind would go blank. It was almost as though the language he had worked so hard to learn just didn't come to him when he needed it the most. Daniel worked for a global company, and many of his colleagues were native English speakers. This created additional pressure, as Daniel wanted to fit in and communicate effectively with his co-workers. However, he found it difficult to speak up during meetings, share his ideas in discussions, or even make small talk in the break room. He was often left nodding and smiling, feeling disconnected from his colleagues. Despite his struggles, Daniel never gave up on the idea of improving his speaking skills. He knew that in order to move forward in his career and build better relationships with his colleagues, he needed to become more comfortable speaking in English. But the question was, how? What could Daniel do to overcome his anxiety and start speaking more confidently? Daniel decided that his first step would be to stop avoiding the situation. He had to face his fear head-on. He realized that the more he avoided speaking, the more anxious he became. So he made a promise to himself that he would take every opportunity to speak, even if it felt uncomfortable. He started small by speaking up more during meetings, even if it was just offering a short comment or asking a question. At first, it was challenging. His heart would race and his voice would shake, but Daniel was determined to push through. He also began to practice speaking English outside of work. One of the first things Daniel did was join an English conversation club. This group met every week to practice speaking English in a relaxed and friendly environment. He had heard about these clubs before, but had been too nervous to join. Now he saw it as an opportunity to practice in a safe space, without the pressure of a formal setting. At the conversation club, Daniel met people from all over the world who were also learning English. Some of them spoke better than others, and some were just as nervous as he was. What Daniel found most encouraging was that everyone was there to learn and improve, and they weren't afraid to make mistakes. In fact, mistakes were seen as part of the process, something that everyone could learn from. This relaxed atmosphere gave Daniel the courage to start speaking. He started with simple sentences, just introducing himself and talking about his day. The group was supportive, and slowly, Daniel began to feel more comfortable. But even though the conversation club was helpful, Daniel knew he needed to go further. He wanted to improve his speaking in real-world situations, not just in the club. So he started practicing at work, in the most challenging environments. In team meetings, Daniel began contributing more, even if it was just by asking a question or sharing a brief opinion. He made a conscious effort to speak up during lunch, breaks, or casual conversations with colleagues. At first, it felt awkward. Daniel was still worried about making mistakes, and he was self-conscious about his accent. But over time, he realized that his colleagues weren't judging him. They were actually impressed by his efforts to communicate in English, and they were more than willing to help him when he didn't understand something or couldn't find the right words. This support made a huge difference. Daniel started to feel more at ease speaking in English, and gradually his confidence grew. Another important step that Daniel took was to work on his pronunciation. He knew that even if he knew the words, they wouldn't have the same impact if they were difficult to understand. So, Daniel started listening to English podcasts and watching videos in English, paying attention to how the speakers pronounced words and used different tones. He practiced mimicking these pronunciations. At first, it felt unnatural, but the more he practiced, the more it became second nature. Daniel also started using language apps that helped him improve his speaking skills. These apps provided exercises that focused on pronunciation, intonation, and conversational phrases. The more he used them, the more confident he became. He would repeat the phrases, record his own voice, and listen back to check for accuracy. This allowed him to track his progress and refine his skills. As Daniel continued to practice, he began to see a shift in his mindset. No longer was he focused on being perfect or avoiding mistakes. Instead, he started to embrace the process of learning. He realized that everyone, no matter how fluent they were, made mistakes, and that mistakes were part of the journey to becoming a better speaker. This shift in attitude was key to his progress. Daniel was no longer afraid to make mistakes. In fact, he started to see them as opportunities to learn and grow. One of the most significant moments for Daniel came when he was asked to give a presentation at work. This was something he had always avoided, but after months of practice, he felt ready. He spent days preparing, writing his notes, and practicing his speech aloud. He also practiced with a colleague who helped him refine his presentation and gave him constructive feedback. When the day of the presentation arrived, Daniel was nervous, but he was no longer paralyzed by fear. He spoke clearly and confidently, even though he still made a few mistakes. At the end of the presentation, his manager praised him for doing such a great job, and his colleagues applauded his effort. For Daniel, this moment was the culmination of all the hard work he had put into improving his speaking skills. He realized that the more he practiced, the more comfortable he became, and the more confident he felt. Daniel's story is a powerful reminder that learning to speak English with confidence isn't about avoiding mistakes or being perfect. It's about facing your fears, taking small steps, and practicing consistently. It's about embracing the process of learning and understanding that mistakes are part of the journey. Daniel's determination to improve his speaking skills shows that with time, patience, and practice, anyone can overcome their language barriers and become a more confident speaker. Key lessons from Daniel's story. Face your fear. Don't avoid. Speaking because of fear. The more you practice, the easier it gets. Start small. Begin with small contributions in meetings or casual conversations, then gradually build up. Join supportive communities. Find language exchange groups or conversation, clubs to practice speaking in a relaxed, supportive environment. Embrace mistakes. Mistakes are an essential part of the learning process. Don't let them hold you back. Work on pronunciation. Focus on improving how you speak, not just what you say. Listening and mimicking native speakers can help. Consistency is key. Practice speaking every day, whether it's with a language app, colleagues, or in everyday situations. Daniel's journey shows us that speaking English is not about being perfect, but about making progress each day. If you're willing to put in the effort and embrace the learning process, you can overcome your speaking challenges and build the confidence to communicate effectively. Part 9. Story 6. Olivia. Let me tell you about my friend Olivia, whose journey with learning English was a little different from the others, but just as inspiring. Olivia had always been a bright and enthusiastic student, but there was one thing she struggled with: speaking English. Olivia had grown up in a country where English was taught in schools, and she was very good at reading and writing. She loved reading novels, articles, and even academic papers in English. But when it came to speaking, she felt like she couldn't get the words out. She could understand conversations just fine, but whenever she needed to respond or engage in a discussion, she would freeze. When Olivia was offered a job opportunity in a multinational company, she was both excited and nervous. The role was a dream come true, but it required her to interact with colleagues from all over the world, many of whom were native English speakers. Olivia knew that this was the perfect opportunity to improve her speaking skills, but she also knew it wasn't going to be easy. The thought of participating in team meetings, joining discussions, or even making small talk with her coworkers made her feel anxious. She knew that her success at the job depended on her ability to speak confidently in English, but she didn't feel ready. In her first few weeks at work, Olivia kept to herself as much as possible. She would attend meetings, listen to others speak, and take notes, but she rarely contributed to the discussions. She felt too nervous to speak up. During casual conversations, whether at lunch or in the break room, Olivia would smile politely, but would stay quiet, not knowing how to begin speaking. It wasn't that she didn't have thoughts to share. It was that she was afraid of making a mistake. She feared that she wouldn't be able to express herself clearly or that people would judge her for her accent or incorrect grammar. This fear made her withdraw, and she started to feel isolated from her colleagues. One day, Olivia's manager called her in for a one-on-one discussion. At first, she was worried that it was about her lack of participation in meetings. But to her surprise, the conversation was supportive and encouraging. Her manager told her that they noticed she had great ideas, but that she hadn't been expressing them. Olivia's manager reassured her that they valued her contributions and that they understood how challenging it could be to speak in a second language. The manager suggested that Olivia could start by practicing speaking in smaller, less intimidating settings, and gradually work her way up to larger meetings. This conversation had a huge impact on Olivia. It made her realize that her fear of speaking wasn't as big as she had imagined, and that her colleagues were supportive, not critical. After that conversation, Olivia knew she had to take action. She couldn't continue hiding from speaking if she wanted to succeed at her job. She started by setting a small, achievable goal: to speak at least once in every meeting, even if it was just a brief comment or question. Olivia was still nervous, but she practiced speaking out loud before meetings. She would read her notes, and when she had a point to make or a question to ask, she would repeat it to herself in English a few times. This helped her prepare mentally and eased some of her anxiety. In addition to speaking in meetings, Olivia decided to find a way to practice outside of work. She joined an online language exchange platform where she could practice speaking with people from different countries. This was an important step for Olivia, as it allowed her to practice speaking with strangers in a low-pressure environment. At first, Olivia was hesitant to make a video call or voice message, but she knew it was the only way to overcome her fear. Over time, the more she practiced, the more comfortable she became. The people she spoke with were understanding and supportive, and Olivia learned that her mistakes didn't matter as much as she thought they did. Everyone she spoke with was there to learn, and they appreciated her efforts. To further build her confidence, Olivia started to keep a speaking journal. Every day she would write down a few sentences about her day, her thoughts, or things she had learned. After writing, she would read those sentences out loud. This practice helped her feel more comfortable speaking English regularly, and it allowed her to gradually expand her vocabulary. Olivia would record herself speaking about the topics in her journal, listen to the recordings, and then analyze where she could improve. This self-feedback process allowed her to see her progress and motivated her to keep going. One of Olivia's favorite activities to help improve her speaking was watching TED Talks and other educational videos in English. She loved how speakers articulated their thoughts clearly, and she would often repeat their sentences, paying close attention to their tone, pronunciation, and pacing. This mimicking technique allowed Olivia to learn new vocabulary and phrases, while also practicing her intonation. She found that she not only learned new words, but she also started using them in her own conversations. Olivia's attitude towards speaking slowly began to change. Initially, she thought that speaking quickly would make her sound more fluent, but she soon realized that speaking too fast made her more anxious and harder to understand. Instead, Olivia began to focus on speaking at a comfortable pace, enunciating her words clearly. She learned that speaking slowly didn't mean speaking poorly. In fact, it helped her organize her thoughts better and reduced her stress. Her colleagues began to notice that she was speaking more confidently and clearly, and they started to engage with her more often in meetings. As Olivia's confidence grew, so did her ability to communicate. She found herself participating more in discussions and even volunteering to lead a few meetings. This was a major breakthrough for her. Olivia, the person who once avoided speaking, was now confidently leading presentations in English. She still made mistakes, but she no longer let them stop her. Instead of apologizing for errors, Olivia simply acknowledged them and moved on, knowing that making mistakes was a natural part of learning. By the end of her first year at the company, Olivia had completely transformed her speaking abilities. She was no longer afraid of expressing herself in English, and she had built strong relationships with her colleagues. Her manager even praised her for her growth, and her confidence was reflected in her work. Olivia realized that speaking English was not about perfection. It was about communication. As long as she could express her ideas clearly and engage with others, that was what truly mattered. Key lessons from Olivia's story. Take small steps. Don't overwhelm yourself by focusing on everything at once. Start by setting small goals and gradually build up. Preparation helps. Practicing speaking before meetings or conversations can ease anxiety and make you feel more prepared. Find supportive spaces. Joining conversation groups or language exchanges can provide you with a safe, low-pressure environment to practice. Practice regularly. Speaking every day, even if it's just a few minutes, will help you improve over time. Embrace mistakes. Mistakes are part of the learning process. They don't define your ability to communicate. How you recover from them does. Focus on clarity, not speed. Speaking clearly and at a comfortable pace helps you feel more confident and ensures others understand you. Use resources to your advantage. Watch videos, listen to podcasts, and engage with materials in English that can help you learn new vocabulary and improve your speaking. Olivia's story shows that with consistent practice, patience, and a shift in mindset, anyone can overcome their fear of speaking and become a confident English speaker. The key is to keep pushing yourself, stay motivated, and embrace every opportunity to speak. Part 10. Story 7. Leo. Let me share with you the story of my friend Leo. Leo's journey in learning English is one that many can relate to. He faced obstacles, struggled with confidence, and found a path forward through persistence and practice. Leo had always been a quiet person. Throughout school, he was excellent at reading, writing, and understanding English. He could read novels, understand movies, and write emails without trouble. However, speaking English was always his biggest challenge. He wasn't shy in his own language, but when it came to speaking English, something held him back. It wasn't a lack of vocabulary or grammar knowledge. It was more about the fear of making mistakes and being misunderstood. Leo worked in a multinational company where English was the primary language of communication. His role involved a lot of collaboration, with international clients, team meetings, and presentations. At first, he managed to get by with written communication, emails, and reports. But when it came to participating in team discussions or presenting ideas to clients, Leo would freeze. He could understand everything said in the meetings, but speaking up, especially in front of others, was incredibly difficult. This fear of speaking was holding him back. And he knew that if he wanted to advance in his career, he needed to overcome it. Leo didn't want to let his fear of speaking stand in the way of his growth, so he decided to take action. The first thing Leo did was acknowledge his fear. He realized that he had been avoiding speaking opportunities, and this only made his fear stronger. He knew he had to stop avoiding situations that required him to speak in English. Leo decided that he would take small steps to gradually build his confidence. He started by setting small, achievable goals. His first goal was simply to speak up once during every team meeting. This seemed manageable, and he committed to it. During meetings, Leo found himself feeling anxious every time his turn to speak approached. But instead of staying silent, he would push himself to speak up, even if it was just a short comment or question. Initially, his voice would tremble, and he'd feel embarrassed if he made a mistake, but he kept telling himself that making mistakes was part of the learning process. With every meeting, Leo felt a bit more comfortable, and soon, he was contributing regularly. He learned to focus on the message he wanted to convey, rather than worrying about the exact words or grammar. Even though this was a big step for Leo, he knew that it wasn't enough. He had to practice speaking in more real-world situations to feel truly confident. Leo started looking for ways to integrate English into his daily life. He decided to start with something simple but effective, speaking to his colleagues in English during casual conversations. At first, Leo was nervous even in informal situations. He would go to the kitchen to make coffee, and if someone was there, he would hesitate before saying anything. His mind would race, thinking about all the potential mistakes he could make. But Leo knew that these small conversations were just as important as speaking in meetings. So, he started initiating conversations with his colleagues, asking how their day was, what they were working on, or simply commenting on something he had noticed. These were small, low-pressure conversations, but they were key to building Leo's confidence. One of Leo's co-workers, a native English speaker, noticed his effort and offered to help him practice. This was a turning point for Leo. He started meeting with this coworker outside of work for short speaking practice sessions. They would meet for coffee, and Leo would talk about his work, his hobbies, or current events. Having a speaking partner who was supportive made all the difference. This coworker would gently correct Leo's mistakes, but always in a positive, encouraging way, which helped Leo feel more at ease. As Leo continued practicing, he began to notice significant improvements in his speaking skills. He felt less anxious about speaking in meetings and began to express himself more naturally. The more he spoke, the easier it became to find the right words. He stopped worrying about his accent and mistakes, focusing instead on conveying his ideas and communicating effectively. But there was still one area that made Leo anxious: giving presentations. Presenting in front of a group had always been his biggest fear. He knew that if he didn't tackle this challenge, he wouldn't be able to move forward in his career. So, Leo decided to take small, consistent steps to prepare for presentations. He started by practicing in front of a mirror. He would write out his presentations and rehearse them aloud, focusing on speaking slowly and clearly. Over time, he felt more comfortable with the content and the delivery. He also began recording himself to listen for any areas of improvement, such as pronunciation or clarity. One of the most helpful things Leo did was watch videos of TED Talks and professional presentations in English. He studied how the speakers presented their ideas, used gestures, and engaged with their audience. Leo realized that public speaking wasn't just about the words. It was about delivery. This helped him feel more confident in his own ability to present. He also started mimicking the speakers in the videos, repeating their sentences aloud, to practice intonation and pacing. Leo's breakthrough came when he was asked to give a presentation at work about a new project he was leading. He was nervous, but he remembered everything he had practiced. He used the techniques he had learned, speaking clearly, focusing on his message, and using his body language to engage the audience. When the presentation was over, Leo was surprised by the positive feedback he received. His colleagues complimented him on how clear and confident he sounded. This feedback was a huge boost to Leo's confidence, and it marked the beginning of his transformation. Leo's story is a testament to the power of persistence and gradual progress. He didn't let his fear of speaking paralyze him. Instead, he faced it head-on, taking small, manageable steps each day. By setting achievable goals, practicing regularly, and finding supportive environments to help him grow, Leo overcame his fear of speaking and became a confident English speaker. Key lessons from Leo's story. Acknowledge your fear. Recognizing your fear is the first step in overcoming it. Don't avoid speaking. Face it directly. Take small steps. Start with small, achievable goals. Even speaking up once in a meeting or starting a casual conversation can build confidence. Practice regularly. The more you speak, the more comfortable you'll become. Practice in everyday situations and with a speaking partner. Find support. Having someone to practice with, whether a colleague or a language partner, can make a big difference. Don't focus on perfection. Focus on communicating effectively rather than speaking perfectly. Mistakes are part of the learning process. Prepare for big challenges. If you fear something, like giving a presentation, take small steps to prepare. Practice in front of a mirror, record yourself, or watch how others do it. Learn from others. Watch and listen to native speakers. Mimic their pronunciation and delivery to improve your own speaking skills. Leo's journey proves that with determination, practice, and support, anyone can overcome their fear of speaking and become a confident communicator in English. The key is to take it one step at a time, keep learning from your mistakes, and most importantly, never give up. Part 11. Summary and Final Tips. As we come to the end of this journey through the stories of James, Lily, Maria, Daniel, Emma, Olivia, and Leo, we can reflect on the key lessons we've learned and the practical strategies that have helped them and can help you improve your English speaking skills. Each of these stories demonstrates how, with determination, consistent practice, and the right mindset, anyone can overcome the challenges of speaking a new language. It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress, learning from mistakes, and staying patient as you build your confidence. Let's take a moment to summarize the key takeaways from these inspiring stories. The power of practice. 1. Of the most consistent themes across these stories is the importance of regular practice. Whether it's speaking to yourself in the mirror, recording your voice, or engaging in real conversations, practice is the foundation of improvement. The more you speak, the more comfortable you'll become, and the more fluent you'll sound. Remember, practice doesn't always have to be in big, formal settings. You can practice speaking anywhere. At home, in casual conversations, during meetings, or even while doing everyday tasks like cooking or walking. The key is to keep speaking, even if you make mistakes. Start small. Build confidence. For many of us, the thought of speaking English in front of others can feel overwhelming. But as we saw in the stories of James, Lily, and Daniel, starting small is an effective way to ease into speaking. Begin by setting achievable goals. Speak up in a meeting, ask a question, or introduce yourself in English to a colleague. Gradually increase your participation, and with each small success, your confidence will grow. Set a goal for yourself every day. Speak English at least once, whether it's in a conversation with a friend, during a team meeting, or even practicing alone. These small steps can add up to significant progress over time. Embrace mistakes. One of the most important lessons we've learned from these stories is that mistakes are an essential part of the learning process. Everyone makes them, native speakers included. The key is not to fear mistakes, but to learn from them. Every error is an opportunity to improve. As Daniel realized, the fear of making mistakes can often be worse than the mistakes themselves. So, when you make a mistake, don't dwell on it. Correct it, move forward, and continue speaking. The more mistakes you make, the closer you get to becoming a fluent speaker. Mistakes are not failures. They are learning experiences. Find a supportive environment. Building your speaking skills is easier when you have a support system. As we saw in the stories of Olivia and Leo, having a mentor, a language partner, or a supportive group of friends or colleagues can make a world of difference. When you practice in a safe and encouraging space, you're less likely to feel self-conscious, and you're more likely to speak confidently. Look for language exchange groups, join online forums, or find a friend who is also learning English so that you can practice together. If you don't have anyone in your immediate circle to practice with, there are plenty of online platforms like HelloTalk, Tandem, or italki where you can find conversation partners. 5. Use technology to your advantage. Technology is a powerful tool that can help you improve your speaking skills. There are countless apps, websites, and platforms that can help you practice speaking English in a fun and interactive way. Language learning apps like Duolingo, Babbel, or Memrise can help you build your vocabulary and practice pronunciation. Additionally, TED Talks, podcasts, and YouTube videos provide exposure to native speakers, which can help you improve your listening and speaking skills. Recording yourself speaking, whether it's through voice notes or video recordings, can also be a helpful way to track your progress and identify areas for improvement. Listening to these recordings will allow you to catch any mistakes and hear your progress over time. Focus on communication, not perfection. As we've seen from all the stories, fluency in English is not about speaking without mistakes. It's about communicating your ideas clearly. Emma's experience with making presentations and Olivia's journey of leading discussions both highlight that confidence in speaking comes from being able to express your thoughts, not from speaking perfectly. If you focus too much on being perfect, you might find yourself overthinking and becoming more anxious. Instead, try to relax and focus on conveying your message. Be patient with yourself and accept that every conversation is a learning opportunity. Speak slowly and clearly. 1. Of the most effective tips for improving your speaking is to focus on speaking slowly and clearly. Speaking quickly can often make it harder for both you and the listener to understand, and it can increase your anxiety. By speaking at a comfortable pace, you'll give yourself time to think about what you want to say, and you'll reduce the chances of stumbling over words. As Leo discovered, slowing down doesn't make you sound less fluent. It makes you sound more confident and ensures that your words are heard. Focus on clarity rather than speed, and remember that effective communication is about being understood, not about talking fast. Use real-life situations. The best way to improve your speaking is by using English in real-life situations. Whether it's ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, or talking to a colleague, practicing in real situations gives you the chance to apply what you've learned in context. The more you speak in real-life scenarios, the more comfortable you will become. Even if you're nervous, try to seize every opportunity to speak. It will help you become more adaptable and build your confidence. Final thoughts. Keep pushing forward. Learning to speak English confidently is a journey, not a destination. It takes time, effort, and patience. Each step you take toward improvement is a victory, whether it's speaking up in a meeting, starting a conversation with a colleague, or simply practicing in front of a mirror. Remember, there's no need to rush. Progress takes time, and it's okay to go at your own pace. The most important thing is to stay consistent, embrace the process, and most importantly, never give up. As James, Lily, Daniel, Olivia, Emma, and Leo showed us, anyone can overcome the fear of speaking and become a confident English speaker with practice, persistence, and the right mindset. So, take these lessons to heart and start implementing them in your own language journey. Set small goals, practice daily, embrace mistakes, and keep speaking, because with every word, you're one step closer to fluency. Great work today. Every moment you spend practicing brings you closer to mastering your English listening and speaking skills. Remember, Progress comes with patience and consistency. If this story inspired you or helped you in your learning journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more lessons and stories. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep believing in your growth. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and keep shining.